I want to bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor to talk a little bit more about this warning from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, which wasn't part of his scripted speech.
Right. So if you were watching earlier this morning, we took the part that the media cameras were allowed to record, and you heard Justin Trudeau said we're now going to have our friends from the media leave, and we're going to continue our conversation. It was kind of a town hall format where people from the floor were going to be able to ask questions of some of the members of the Canada-US Council that sort of has been formed as an advisory group around the Prime Minister and his cabinet for these efforts, but caught on tape and also heard by some print journalists as well, who are also filing on what they heard. Some of them hearing a little bit more than what our actual recording caught. But what I can tell you is that it had to do with what was originally portrayed as a bit of a joke on Donald Trump's part, this 51st state stuff that he kept leaning into and talking about. But it suggested that actually this is serious now, that in the minds of Justin Trudeau and his cabinet and key decision makers, they no longer believe that this annexation stuff is a joke in the mind of Donald Trump. It has to do with the way he sees things like the critical minerals trade, that sort of, if the US perceives it needs resources that Canada has, rather than seeing them used as leverage against it in a negotiation, or rather than having to kind of work with, pay fairly, and negotiate for access to Canada's resources. In Donald Trump's mind, easier just to take the imperialist approach, the sort of the manifest destiny theory back on again here, and sort of take Canada over. Similar to comments we've heard him make about Greenland, for example, which also has critical minerals. We have tried to sort of isolate and boost the audio so it's a little bit easier to hear, but we do have a short snippet of what our equipment was able to capture that Trudeau said next.
Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing. In my conversation with him.
Okay, and then it cuts out, but he's sort of telling the crowd that sort of this is his impression coming away. Now, is this surprising to hear him say this in this forum? Not necessarily. We understand from sourcing with respect to the conversation the Prime Minister had with the premiers on Saturday after the tariff threat was made official, and also from Elizabeth May, who was part of the conversation he had with opposition leaders later in the weekend, that this is similar to what he communicated at that time, that notwithstanding what you just heard Melanie Joly talking about in terms of border measures and fentanyl and sort of the way the executive order sort of cites this as an emergency, therefore giving the powers and justifying the tariff move, that in fact, in Trudeau's estimation and the estimation of the cabinet, this really is a national sovereignty issue. This is about threatening Canada, as an independent country. Now, this isn't something that U.S. polls are on side with. This isn't something I think that it's understood that the majority of Congress would back him on. But at the moment, with more and more authoritarian moves coming out of the White House and some question about who's in a position to stand in his way with respect to all sorts of things, this, of course, really something to focus minds at this gathering in Toronto. And in fairness to Ms. Joly, she may not even be aware in Halifax, that room in Halifax may not even know kind of what's gone down in Toronto so far today. Other cabinet ministers, though, were scrumming, including three of her colleagues earlier today. Here's what Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon made of this remark of Trudeau's when asked about it.
Canada's free. Canada is sovereign. Canada will choose its own destiny. Thank you very much. But Canada is forever. So Canada will make its choices. Canada, as we all know, we have regions, we have political differences, we have debates, we have lively question and answer sessions. But Canada is united on one thing, its pride in being Canadian. And we will always, always, always stand up for this country, for its people, and for the ability to make our choices for ourselves.